Look, Margaret, you can see there's no room. Go eat in the bathroom. You're already used to it. The words from me daughter-in-law, Amber, echoed through the restaurant like a public slap. I felt more than 50 pairs of eyes lock onto me, waiting for my reaction. Some guests stifled their laughter. Others looked away in discomfort. But Amber just stood there next to the main table with that twisted smile I had struggled to tolerate for years. My son, Stephen, was sitting right beside her, checking his phone as if he hadn't heard a thing, as if his mother hadn't just been humiliated in front of his entire social circle. It was their wedding anniversary, 15 years together, and I had paid for every cent of that celebration. The Crest Room, with its imported linen tablecloths and floral arrangements that cost more than a family's entire monthly salary, all on my corporate card, all under my name. And there I was, standing in the middle of the room like an intruder in my ivory-cold dress that I had chosen with such care that morning. I had spent an hour in front of the mirror, trying on 3 different options, wanting to look presentable for my only son's celebration. How naive I was to think my presence would be welcome. How foolish to believe that after 15 years of marriage, after everything I had done for them, they would finally see me as part of their family. The bathroom. Margaret, Amber repeated, raising her voice even louder to make sure everyone heard. It's where you're usually most comfortable, right? Cleaning, fixing, doing what you do best. The laughter was more open this time. I felt the heat rise up my neck, my hands beginning to tremble slightly, but not from shame. It was something different. It was a cold clarity I had never experienced before. In that moment, with all those people looking at me as if I were a nuisance, as if I were the cleaning lady who had snuck into an elegant party, something inside me broke. Or rather, something was set free. I looked at my son. Stephen, I whispered, hoping that he at least would say something, that he would defend me, that he would remember who had paid for his college, who had bought him his first car, who had financed every single one of his failed dreams. But he just glanced up from his phone for a second, looked at me with those empty eyes I no longer recognized, and looked back down. His silence hurt more than all of Amber's cruel words combined. I picked up my purse, that worn leather bag I had used for 20 years, and walked toward the exit. No one tried to stop me. No one asked if I was okay. I heard Amber say something about how I had finally understood my place, and more laughter followed. But I was already outside breathing the cool night air, feeling the city lights flicker in front of me like silent witnesses to my humiliation. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, seeing my reflection in the restaurant window, a 72-year-old woman with wrinkles that told stories of hard work, of sleepless nights building something from scratch. A woman who had sacrificed everything to give her son a better life. And there was the result, being thrown out like trash from a party she herself was paying for. I took out my phone and dialed a number I had kept saved for months. Mr. Santos, my personal lawyer, answered on the second ring. Mr. Santos, I need you to activate Plan B now tonight. My voice sounded strangely calm, almost cold. There was a silence on the other end. Are you sure, Mrs. Margaret? There's no turning back from this. Once we sell the shares and cancel the transfers, I have never been more sure of anything in my life. I interrupted. Sell everything. Cancel everything. And I want it done before this damn dinner is over. I heard Mr. Santos take a deep breath. I understand. I will call you in 30 minutes with the documents ready. The Japanese buyers have been waiting for this opportunity for 2 years. They will pay the $200 million without blinking. $200 million. That was the figure no one in my family knew about. Stephen thought I had a small textile company that barely turned a profit. Amber believed the monthly $25,000 transfers they received were my life savings. Neither of them knew that Margaret Herrera was the owner of the largest distribution chain of Latin American textiles in the United States. That my warehouses supplied the biggest brands in the country. That I had built an empire working 18 hours a day while raising my son alone after his father abandoned us. I walked to my car, that old gray sedan I had been driving for 10 years. Stephen always made fun of it, saying it looked like a taxi from the 90s. Amber insisted I buy something more elegant, something that wouldn't embarrass her when they saw me arrive. But I had gotten used to flying under the radar, to no one seeing me as a threat, to being underestimated. I sat in the car and waited. The restaurant lights continued to shine, soft music filtering through the walls. I imagined Stephen and Amber toasting with French champagne, the kind that cost $500 a bottle. I imagined the guests congratulating them on their perfect marriage, on their enviable life. No one knew that every piece of furniture in their condo, every jewel on Amber's neck, every Italian suit Stephen wore had my name on the invoice. My phone vibrated. It was a message from my granddaughter, Claire. "Grandma, where are you? I saw you leave. Are you okay? Mom says you left because you didn't feel well, but I know that's a lie." The only person in that family who still called me grandma with affection. The only one who visited me without asking for money first. "I'm fine, my love. I just needed some fresh air. Go back to the party." "Don't worry about me," I wrote back. I didn't want to involve her in what was about to happen. Claire was 22 years old. She was finishing college. She had her whole life ahead of her. She didn't need to see her family implode tonight. Mr. Santos called exactly 30 minutes later. "The papers are ready. The Japanese will transfer the funds tomorrow morning at the first hour. $200 million into your personal account. I have conled the corporate card your son was using, the one registered for the restaurant payment. I have also suspended all automatic transfers scheduled for this month and the following ones. The properties remain in your name as they always were. The condo where your son and daughter-in-law live is registered as a corporate loan. Technically, they can be evicted in 30 days. He paused. "Mrs. Margaret, are you absolutely sure? Your son is." My son just let his wife publicly humiliate me without saying a word. My son has taken my money for 15 years, as if it were his birthright. My son never asked how I was, never took an interest in my health, never wanted to know if I needed anything. He only called when he needed more. More money for the restaurant, more money for vacations, more money to maintain the charade of his perfect life. Mr. Santos was quiet for a moment. "I understand. The documents will be sent tonight. Tomorrow at 9 in the morning, the company will officially change hands. Congratulations, Mrs. Margaret. You just closed the biggest textile sale of the decade." I hung up and stared at the phone screen. I felt a strange mixture of relief and sadness. I had built that company thinking of leaving. Something for Stephen. I had worked until my fingers bled on those first sewing machines. I had slept on the factory floor to save on rent. I had turned down marriage proposals because I had no time for anything but work and raising my son. All for him. Also, he could have what I never had. And now I was selling it all. $200 million he would never see. $200 million I wouldn't spend on fancy restaurants or European vacations. $200 million that represented 45 years of my life. I looked at the clock. It was 9:40 at night. I calculated that dessert would be being served. That 5-tier cake that had cost $7,000. When the time came to pay, when the waiter brought the bill and swiped my corporate card, the system would reject it, declined. Insufficient funds. And all those guests who had laughed at me, all those friends of Stephen and Amber who had seen me as a burdensome old woman would witness their shame. It wasn't revenge. Or maybe it was a little, but more than that, it was justice. It was reclaiming my dignity. It was reminding them that the old woman they had sent to the bathroom was the only reason they could afford to celebrate in that place. I started the car and drove to my house. Not the luxurious condo where Stephen lived. Not the residence with a pool that Amber always bragged about on her social media. My home was a small 2-bedroom apartment in a quiet neighborhood with old furniture I had bought secondhand decades ago. Stephen was ashamed that I lived there. He always told me to buy something better, that with all the money I supposedly had, there was no excuse to live like a poor person. What he didn't understand was that I didn't need luxuries. I had grown up with nothing. I had known hunger, cold, uncertainty. This small apartment was a palace compared to the tin-roofed room where I grew up. And every cent I didn't spend on myself was a cent I could invest in the company to grow, to build something solid. But not anymore. I was no longer going to live like a poor person so they could live like rich ones. I was no longer going to deny myself a decent plate of food so Amber could buy designer handbags. I was no longer going to wear worn-out clothes so Steven could dress in the best stores in the city. I got home and took off my shoes. My feet ached. They always act after standing for a long time. I had arthritis in my knees, a product of years working in the factory.
Steven didn't know.
I had never told him about my aches, my pains, my sleepless nights. I didn't want to be a burden. I didn't want him to see me as a sick old woman. How ironic. I had tried so hard not to be a nuisance that they had decided I was invisible. I poured myself a glass of water and sat on the sofa. The same sofa where I had breastfed Steven as a baby. The same sofa where I had cried when his father left us. The same sofa where I had planned every business move that had led me to build an empire. 45 years of memories in this small space. My phone started to ring. It was Steven. I let it ring. He called again and again and again. 8 calls in 5 minutes. Then the messages came. Mom, what did you do? The card isn't working. Mom, answer. This is humiliating. Mom, people are staring at us. Mom, I need you to come now. Mom, fix this. I turned off the phone. For the first time in 15 years, I turned off the phone without feeling guilty, without feeling the obligation to solve their problems, without running out to rescue him from his own consequences. I sat on the sofa, looking at the dark phone on the coffee table. It was strange, that silence. For years, I had slept with the phone on the nightstand, always alert, always waiting for Steven to need me. How many times had I woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning because he had an emergency? How many times had I gone out in the middle of the night to bring him money, to solve some problem with suppliers, to pay debts he had accumulated with his irresponsibility? I got up and walked to my bedroom. I opened the closet and took out an old shoebox I kept on the top shelf. Inside were the photographs. Steven as a baby wrapped in a knitted blanket I had made myself. Steven on his first day of school with that uniform that had cost me 2 weeks' pay. Steven at his college graduation with a cap and gown I had paid for in 6 installments. Steven at his wedding with that designer suit that had cost $8,000 and that I had paid for without him even saying thank you. I took that last photograph. It was from his wedding day 15 years ago. I was standing next to him in a pearl-colored dress I had bought at a discount store. Amber was on his other side, radiant in her wedding dress that had cost $35,000. I remember that day while they were getting ready. I heard Amber tell her mother that at least I had had the good sense not to wear something flashy that would ruin the photos. As if I were an inconvenient detail that had to be hidden, I put the photographs away and closed the box. Tomorrow I would go buy a new album, one where I would only keep the memories worth preserving. Steven's first years. When he still hugged me when he saw me come home from work. When he still told me I was his hero. When he still loved me unconditionally, without interest. I turned on the phone. 37 missed calls. Steven, Amber. Unknown numbers that were probably their friends. 53 text messages. I read them all one by one with a calm that surprised me. The first messages from Steven were panicked. Mom, the card was declined. Mom, I need you to transfer money now. Mom, this is an emergency. Then came Amber's. Margaret, I don't know what game you're playing, but it's not funny. Fix this immediately, or there will be consequences. Then the messages became more desperate. Mom, I had to borrow money from the guests to pay. Mom, you made us look ridiculous. Mom, how could you do this to us?
How could I do this to them?
That phrase was repeated in several messages, as if I were the villain. As if I had done something unforgivable. Not them who had publicly humiliated me. Not them who had treated me like garbage. Not them who for years had taken my money as if it were a right and not a gift. I was the bad one for finally saying enough was enough. There was a message from Claire. Grandma, Dad is furious. He says you blocked his cards and canceled the transfers. Mom is crying and screaming. I don't understand what happened, but whatever it is, I'm on your side always. I love you. I felt my eyes moisten. That girl, that beautiful girl who had inherited my spirit, not her parents' greed. Claire was studying nursing. She worked weekends at a city hospital to pay for her expenses. She had never asked me for money. When I offered to help, she told me she preferred to earn things for herself. So different from her father. I replied, "My love, I'm fine.
Don't worry about me.
Take care of yourself. We'll talk calmly soon. I love you more than words can express." I put the phone down and went to the kitchen. I made a cup of chamomile tea, the kind that helped me sleep on difficult nights. I sat by the window and looked out at the street. The lights in the neighboring apartments were on. Families eating dinner together. Parents helping their children with homework. Couples watching television, cuddled together. Normal, simple, honest lives. I had wanted that. A family
That valued me.
A son who sought me out because he missed me, not because he needed money. A daughter-in-law who treated me with respect, even if it was just basic. I wasn't asking for unconditional love. I was just asking not to be treated like a nuisance, like an ATM, like someone whose only function was to finance their whims. The phone rang again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize. I answered, "Mrs. Margaret Herrera, this is the manager of the Crest Room. I apologize for bothering you at this hour, but there was an incident with the payment for tonight's celebration. Your son mentioned that you had covered the expenses, but the card was declined. We managed to resolve the situation temporarily, but we need to confirm the payment method for tomorrow. The celebration is over, I assume," I replied in a calm voice. "Yes, ma'am. About an hour ago, but the outstanding balance is $42,000. Mr. Stevens signed a temporary promissory note, but we need cancel the promissory note. I do not authorize any charges. I will not make any payment related to that celebration. If my son signed something, it is his responsibility, not mine." There was an uncomfortable silence, but ma'am, I understand there was a prior agreement. Your son mentioned that you always cover these events. My son is mistaken. There is no agreement, and I recommend that in the future you verify who is actually paying before assuming commitments of that magnitude. Good night. I hung up before he could respond. I felt a strange sense of power. For years, I had been the silent solution to all of Stephen's problems. The one who paid, without asking. The one who signed without reading. The one who said yes to everything, because I was afraid of losing my son. I was afraid that if I stopped being useful, I would stop being loved. What an irony to discover. That I was never loved. I was only convenient. I was only necessary. And the day I stopped being useful, they sent me to the bathroom like a dog. I finished my tea and lay back on the sofa. I didn't want to go to my bed yet. I knew I wouldn't be able to sleep. My mind was too active, processing everything that had happened, everything that was to come. Tomorrow, my life would change completely. Tomorrow, I would officially be a woman with $200 million in the bank and without the burden of supporting a family that didn't value me. I thought of my mother. She had died 20 years ago, but I still remembered her words. "Mija, never let anyone make you feel less than what you are. Not a man, not a boss, not even your own blood. Your dignity is not for sale." I wish I had listened to her sooner. I wish I had had the courage to set boundaries years ago, but I suppose it's never too late to start. The phone vibrated again. Another message from Stephen. "Mom, I need to talk to you face to face. I'm coming to your house now. You can't ignore me like this. I'm your son." I looked at the time. It was 11 at night. Of course, he would come. Of course, he thought he could show up and demand explanations. Of course, he believed I would give in, that I would apologize, that I would open my wallet again and solve his problems. But this time would be different. This time, I was ready. I got up and walked to the hallway mirror. I looked at myself intently. Margaret Herrera, 72 years old, survivor, fighter, empire builder, mother who gave everything. And now a woman taking her life back. 15 minutes later, I heard the doorbell. Insistent, desperate, as if someone was ringing an emergency alarm. Then came the pounding on the door. "Mom, open up. Mom, I know you're in there. Mom, we need to talk now." Stephen's voice sounded.